Order, please. Before we begin the day routine, the subject for this evening's late debate was submitted by the Honourable Member for Guysborough-Sheet Harbour. Be resolved that MLAs in this legislature recognize the athletic ability of Guysborough-Sheet Harbour individuals who have been named to the 2005 Canada Summer Games, and also recognize the dedication taken by 449 Nova Scotians in preparing for the Games in August in Regina. Be debated this evening at 6 p.m. Begin the day routine presenting and reading petitions. The Honourable Member for Pictou West.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I beg leave to table a petition from concerned residents near Swains Road in Shelburne County, and I would like to see their 4.5-mile gravel road reopened as a temporary detour. And the operative clause reads, "We petition and request that you, as Minister of Transportation, reopen the Swains Road, whereby it can be used as a detour during the replacement of the Port Clyde Bridge." And this is signed by 303 residents of the area, and I too have affixed my signature.
Petition is tabled. The Honourable Member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to table a petition signed by Nova Scotians concerned about the high and ever-rising cost of post-secondary tuition. Mr. Speaker, I have affixed my signature there too. Thank you.
Petition is tabled. Now, Member Cape Breton Centre on introduction.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, in our West Gallery, we have members of the Canadian Union of Public Employees, and they are, and I would ask them to stand when they mention name and then receive the reception of the House, Mr. Speaker. Kim Kale with VON in Cumberland County as a home care worker with QP Local 3953. Roberta Hickman, home care worker with New Waterford Homemaker Service, QP Local 3986. And Jackie Bramwell and Ruth Comer are also in the gallery. Could they rise and receive the warm welcome to the House, Mr. Speaker?
Certainly welcome our special guests to the gallery today and hope they enjoy the proceedings. The Honourable Member for Pictou West on petition.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to table a petition from a number of independent gasoline retailers throughout Nova Scotia who are very concerned about the number of gas stations that are closing in this province, and who are asking very much for price regulation of home heating fuel and gasoline. And the operative clause reads, "The undersigned gasoline retailers strongly urge the government to introduce legislation to regulate gasoline prices, including minimum and maximum retail margins, before the end of the spring sitting of this legislature." And this has been signed by 51 gasoline retailers from around the province, and I too have affixed my signature.
This is tabled. Presenting reports of committees. Table reports, regulations, and other papers. Statements by ministers. Government notice the motion. Introduction of bills. Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to introduce a bill entitled "An Act to Ensure Fair and Equitable Fuel Prices in Nova Scotia."
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition begs leave to introduce a bill entitled "An Act to Ensure Fair and Equitable Fuel Prices in Nova Scotia."
Thanks. Bill 217, entitled "An Act to Ensure Fair and Equitable Fuel Prices in Nova Scotia."
Or the bill will be read a second time at a future date. The Honourable Member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce a bill entitled "An Act to Amend Chapter 293 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Motor Vehicle Act." If I could as well, Mr. Speaker.
Just wait.
Oh, you have to read this first. Okay.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Clayton Park begs leave to introduce a bill entitled "An Act to Amend Chapter 293 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Motor Vehicle Act."
Bill 218, entitled "An Act to Amend Chapter 293 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Motor Vehicle Act."
The bill will be read a second time at a future date. The Honourable Member for Halifax Clayton Park on an introduction.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate that. I should have done the introduction first. I'd like to draw the members' attention to the West Gallery, where we have a visitor today. Her name is Dawn Sloan, and she's the councillor for downtown Halifax, a very active councillor and a strong voice for her community. And I welcome her here today. Perhaps Dawn would rise and receive the warm welcome of the House.
The honourable member for Preston on introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to also draw the attention of the members in the House to the West Gallery, where we have students from the Graham Creighton Junior High School, grade 8, 23 students altogether with their teacher Melinda Day, and a very good friend of mine, Craig Williams, and John Peter McNeil. I'd ask them all to stand and receive a warm welcome from the House.
Certainly welcome all guests to gallery today. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition. Introduction of bills.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 475 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Trade Union Act.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 475 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Trade Union Act.
Bill 219, entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 475 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Trade Union Act.
This bill be read a second time at a future date. Notice of motion. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the British Columbia NDP won an additional 30 seats in yesterday's provincial election under the leadership of Carol James, thereby transforming the legislative situation in that province. And whereas Premier Gordon Campbell won a second consecutive term, although with a minority of the votes cast, and whereas British Columbians reversed recent trends by voting in significantly greater numbers and by giving their support to a proposal for a form of proportional representation. Therefore, be it resolved that the House congratulate British Columbians for demonstrating that Canadians are ready to participate in huge numbers in the political process, and also to congratulate Carol James and Gordon Campbell on their respective victories. And Mr. Speaker, I would request waiver and passage without debate.
Waivers are agreed. All those in favour say aye. Countermanded nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Member for Cape Breton South.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas on April 18th, the spring session of the legislature reconvened, and whereas each session we as members have the pleasure of meeting many new and enthusiastic youth interested in learning about the workings of the legislature by becoming pages, and these youth play a valuable role in the daily activities of the House. And whereas we must also realize the importance of all those who remain so helpful and professional throughout the year, including the commissionaires and staff from the Legislative Library, Ledge Television, Legislative Council, Hansard, as well as Mike Laffin and Peter Terrio, and all other legislative staff. Therefore, be it resolved, the members of this House realize the important role these individuals play during the session and thank them for their hard work, professionalism, and dedication. I would ask for waiver, Mr. Speaker.
Question waivers is agreed. All those in favour say aye. Countermanded nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Register.com is a leading provider of global domain names, websites, email accounts, and other internet services with a headquarters in New York City and a facility in Yarmouth, and whereas Nova Scotia's top-rated infrastructure, a loyal and talented workforce, and a strong community support attracted Register.com to Yarmouth in the first place and has given the company the confidence to expand its Yarmouth operation, and whereas Register.com is positioned to increase its workforce in Nova Scotia by over 300 jobs to as many as 570 positions, including 120 higher-skilled, higher-paid jobs, and as many as 150 new work-from-home positions from southwestern and rural Nova Scotia. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of the House commend the people of Yarmouth, Nova Scotia Business Inc. and Register.com for recognizing the strength of Nova Scotia's labour force and creating the right conditions to allow the company to create new jobs in Nova Scotia. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver.
Request waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order, please. Order, please. The honourable member for Cape Breton West. On introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to introduce to you and through you to all members of the House of Assembly an individual in your gallery, the Speaker's Gallery, a member of the Halifax Regional Municipality, a very prominent and active member of that council, Councillor Sue Utek. And I would ask if Ms. Utek would rise and receive the warm applause of the council.
Thank you. The honourable member, Cole Harbour, Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Eastern Passage Education Centre has a strong tradition of excellent athletic teams and has become a formidable force in junior high school athletics in its short history. Whereas Eastern Passage Education Centre hosted the 2004-2005 Halifax Regional Junior High School Girls Lacrosse Championship, and whereas Eastern Passage team finished second in the championship as the result captured a banner for the school. Therefore, be it resolved that this House recognize the Eastern Passage Education Centre Girls Lacrosse team on finishing second at the Capital Region Championship and winning a banner for the school. And I ask for waiver, Mr. Speaker.
Request for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable leader of the official opposition on an introduction.
Please, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to bring to your attention and to the attention of the House, these are not folks who I'm going to try and all name, but I'd like to bring to your attention, these are gasoline retailers from around the province who are here today. They have a particular interest in the fair fuel pricing bill that was just introduced, and I know that they're here to take the opportunity to try and speak to members of the legislature, and they're here to try and make the point that they're in need of the assistance of the House of Assembly. And Mr. Speaker, I would ask if all members would give them a warm round of applause.
Certainly appreciate and welcome the people to the gallery today and hope they enjoy the proceedings. The honourable member. The honourable member for Waverley Fall River Beaverbank.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Adventure Art, a business in Fall River since '93, continues to create considerable interest in classes for local area residents wanting to learn more about spring arts and crafts classes, and whereas Adventure Art is described as providing inspiration, guidance, and instruction to community members young and old, and whereas 11-year-old Virginia Heron is learning plenty as she was recently featured in the front page of the community newspaper, The Laker, showing her creative and artistic talents while reporting brisk sales for her line of jewelry. Therefore, be resolved that all MLAs in the House extend our best wishes to Cindy Patricken, owner and operator of Adventure Art, and to Virginia Heron, who took on a challenge and continues to show her gifted talents. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice.
Request for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Pictou West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Lillian Critton Williams of Pictou will be celebrating her 107th birthday on June the 16th, and whereas his mother of 8 was the first woman councillor in the town of Mulgrave, where she served for 15 years, including time as deputy mayor, and whereas over the years this memorable lady has volunteered with her church, the Red Cross, the IODE, seniors, and the library, amongst others, and was never timid to stand up for what is right. Therefore, be resolved that this Nova Scotia legislature congratulates this remarkable lady who now lives with her daughter in Pictou, and wish Lillian Williams the very best on her 107th birthday and good health for years to come. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver and passage without debate.
Request for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Pictou East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the spring season in the province of Nova Scotia is well known for the promise of bringing forth new life and new beginnings, and whereas on March 15, 2005, the MLA for the Eastern Shore riding, Bill Dukes, recently became a first-time grandfather with the arrival of a beautiful 8-pound, 3-ounce baby girl, Madison Michelle Dukes. And whereas baby Madison, who is a welcome joy to her parents, Danielle and Aaron, is also an overwhelming delight and blessing to her proud grandparents, Bill and Colette Dukes, as well as a pleasure to her aunts, Michelle, Melissa, and Megan. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House congratulate and wish the Dukes family all the best with their new beginning, Madison, Michelle, and I seek waiver of notice.
Question for waivers is agreed. All those in favor say aye. Counterminded nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Cape Breton Nova.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas on January the 14th, 2005, in the city of Sydney, the official opening of the Sydney Ports Access Road took place. And whereas this stretch of road connecting Lingan Road and the community of Whitney Pier to Highway 125 will go a long way in improving traffic flow as well as playing a prominent role in future economic development in the community. And whereas Mary Best, a longtime resident of Tupper Street, was the first motorist to exit Lingan Road heading for Highway 125. Therefore, be it resolved the members of the Legislative Assembly acknowledge the opening of the Sydney Port Access Road, which will go a long way in attracting new business and investment to Whitney Pier, helping to restore it to its flourishing community it once was. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question for waivers is agreed. All those in favor say aye. Counterminded nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Preston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. For Roland Marco Simmons of North Preston recently received his Bachelor of Music, Engineering, and Production degree from Berklee College of Music in Boston. And whereas Marco was the first Indigenous Black Nova Scotian to graduate from Berklee College of Music, and where Berklee College of Music in Boston is the world's largest independent music college and the premier institution for the study of contemporary music. Therefore, it be resolved that the members of this House congratulate Marco Simmons on his academic success and wish him all the best in his musical career. And I'd ask for waiver.
Question for waivers is agreed. All those in favor say aye. Counterminded nay. Motion is carried. The honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Premier, I hereby give notice on a future date I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Pictou County Chamber of Commerce and the Pictou Regional Development Commission recently hosted Energy and Transition, a symposium on traditional and new alternative forms of energy. Whereas Symposium Chair Mike Jenkins said there is no more appropriate an area to host the event than Pictou County because of our historical position as an industrial leader. Whereas the symposium covered discussion on various energy sectors, electricity, oil, natural gas, and wind. Therefore, be resolved that members of this legislature thank Mr. Jenkins and the Chamber and the Regional Development Commission, along with all the organizers, for hosting a forum to discuss what is for Nova Scotia and the world an extremely important issue, the outlook for our energy resources. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver and passage without debate.
Question for waivers is agreed. All those in favor say aye. Counterminded nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Cole Harbour Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Eastern Passage Education Centre has a tradition of excellence in cheerleading in the capital region. Whereas at this year's regional competition, the Eastern Passage Education Centre cheerleading team won first place in the capital region. Whereas the Eastern Passage cheerleading team was coached by Heather Bain, Christopher Cunningham, Stephen Mills, and Lisa Hobeck. Therefore, be it resolved that this House congratulate the Eastern Passage Education Centre cheerleading team on winning the Capital Region Championship and congratulate and recognize the support of parents and coaches, Heather Bain, Christopher Cunningham, Stephen Mills, and Lisa Hobeck. And I ask for waiver, Mr. Speaker.
For waivers, it agreed. All those in favor say aye. Counterminded nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Kings West.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on the future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Dr. Jim Gunn, teacher, administrator, and currently superintendent of the Annapolis Valley Regional School Board, has dedicated 36 years of his professional life to the education of Nova Scotia students, will retire on July 31st, this year. And whereas Dr. Gunn accepted the challenges of amalgamation in 1996 and attracted excellent people to his team, created the best climate for establishing strong relationships, and provided leadership that introduced initiatives that set high standards for the amalgamated process. And whereas the commitment Dr. Gunn has made to ensuring generations of students have received the best possible education experience has been an inspiration to students and staff at the Annapolis Valley Regional School Board, and he has consistently led by example and truly been an asset to his community. Therefore, be it resolved that the members of this House recognize the contribution Dr. Gunn has made to the Annapolis Valley Regional School Board and wish him health and happiness in retirement. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice, passage without debate.
Question waivers are agreed. All those in favor say aye. Counterminded nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Guysborough, Sheet Harbour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas 15 members have been named to the Nova Scotia men's softball team, getting ready for the 2005 Canada Summer Games in Regina, and whereas Donnelly Archibald of Aspen, Guysborough County, and Corey Avery from Larry's River, Guysborough County, will join 13 other team members in an attempt to bring home a gold medal for Nova Scotia when the games begin on August the 6th in Regina. And whereas the 15 players and the 3-person coaching staff will comprise 18 of Nova Scotia's 449 members who will be volunteering or participating in this year's games. Therefore, be it resolved that all MLAs in this House of Assembly congratulate Donnelly and Corey for their selection and wish them every success when they take the ball to the ball diamond in Regina in August. And I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question waivers are agreed. All those in favor say aye. Counterminded nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Glace Bay.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Ashley Diane Parsons of Glace Bay graduated from Cape Breton University with both a Bachelor of Science and Bachelor of Technology degree, and whereas she was awarded the Canadian Society for Chemistry Medal for a student demonstrating excellence in chemistry, and whereas Ms. Parsons will be attending Dalhousie University next term, therefore be it resolved the members of this House extend congratulations to Ashley Parsons for her success and wish her all the best in her future endeavours. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question waivers are agreed. All those in favor say aye. Counterminded nay. Motion is carried. The honourable Minister of Human Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas developing public speaking skills at a young age is so important to creating self-confidence and positive self-image, and whereas the Hillendale 4-H Club of Lunenburg County creates opportunities for its members to present speeches and demonstrations, and whereas the 4-H Cloverbuds and 4-H Junior members participated in public speaking events. Therefore, be it resolved that this House congratulate the Hillendale 4-H Club of Lunenburg County for the leadership and the following 4-H members who took the challenge. 4-H Cloverbuds Luke Smith, Seamus Sutherland, Jessica Lonis, Emma Sutherland, Abby Cook, and Jerry Lynn Now. The junior members Lucas Weil, Aaron Myra, Ashley Myra, Megan Broadman, Leah Cook, Jennifer Culligat, and Conrad Getson. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice.
Question waivers are agreed. All those in favor say aye. Counterminded nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas good infrastructure is vital to the well-being of communities throughout rural Nova Scotia, and whereas Burke's Lane and Kennedy Lane and Little Lorraine, Cape Breton are gravelled roadways that require considerable annual maintenance, and whereas paving these 2 lanes would save the Department of Transportation and Public Works much needed tax dollars, therefore be it resolved the Minister of Transportation and Public Works examine the possibility of paving Burke's Lane and Kennedy Lane for the benefit of all stakeholders.
Notice is tabled. The honourable member for Annapolis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas National VON Week runs from May 16th to 22nd with the theme Strong Roots for a Healthy Tomorrow, and whereas VON is a not-for-profit national health organization and registered charity offering a wide range of community health care solutions that meet the needs of Canadians, and whereas this organization is dedicated to being a leader in the delivering of innovative, comprehensive health and social services, and to influence and develop the health and social policy of Canada,
Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House recognize the many contributions of more than 20,000 staff and volunteers across Canada that play a key role in helping Canadians remain independent in their communities and living in their own homes. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future date I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas on Sunday, April 3rd, 2005, the National Boxing Championships were held in Prince George, British Columbia, and whereas after years of hard work, dedication, and unfaltering commitment, 15-year-old Sydney Mines resident Michael Giroux captured the Canadian welterweight gold title, and whereas Michael is a member of the Tommy Gordon Boxing Club in Florence, therefore be it resolved that all members of this House join me in extending congratulations to Michael Giroux for his outstanding achievement and recognize the dedication and commitment of the volunteer leaders and coaches. Mr. Speaker, request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Member for Digby Annapolis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas new stress testing equipment was purchased with a $25,000 donation from Weymouth North native Richard Gadet in memory of his wife Ruth, and whereas the stress machine, which is a treadmill hooked up to a computer with cardio monitors, helps determine how much activity a recovering heart attack patient can do without endangering their health. And whereas because of his generosity, the Digby General Hospital will have a cardiologist there every month, which means a lot less traveling and less stress for cardiac patients. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House congratulate Richard Gadet for his thoughtfulness and generosity towards this community and wish him every success and happiness in the future. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Tourism, Culture and Heritage.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. For Janelle Cameron was born into a musical family in Glencoe Station, Inverness County for over 30 years has traveled throughout the world playing Celtic music when Celtic wasn't cool. And whereas Janelle is often referred to as the godfather of Celtic music. Whereas as many musical and personal friends are holding concerts for Janelle in Halifax and Sydney this month at Mabou in June, featuring an incredible lineup of East Coast talent. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House join me in thanking everyone involved in these concerts and extend best wishes to Janelle and Cameron, his wife Angela, and his family. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Member for Victoria the Lakes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas concerned Cape Bretoners have raised their concerns about strip mining on several occasions, and whereas these concerns are rightfully shared by many residents of Victoria the Lakes, and whereas the Minister of Natural Resources assured me that consultation with residents will take place before any strip mining begins in this area of the province, therefore be it resolved that the members of this House encourage the government to contact and meet with the concerned residents and address their concerns regarding strip mining in their area. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver and passage without debate.
Waiver, is it agreed? Hear no. Notice is tabled. The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas in 1805, Thomas Cotton Hallamore settled with his family in New Cornwall, Lunenburg County, which he named after his home of Cornwall, England. And whereas this year, 2005, marks the 200th anniversary of the founding of the New Cornwall community. And whereas Bonnie Surratt and Madeline Oxener, Thomas Hallamore's cousins, are organizing a Hallamore reunion as part of the activities to celebrate the 200th anniversary of the founding of New Cornwall, Lunenburg County. Therefore, be it resolved that the members of the House of Assembly congratulate New Cornwall, Lunenburg County on its 200th anniversary and wish Bonnie Surratt and Madeline Oxener a very happy reunion with their Hallamore relatives. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Member for Cape Breton South.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Masonic Order in Sydney has been well served by Sydney Lodge number 84 for the past 100 years, and whereas Sydney Lodge number 84 will be celebrating its achievements in masonry at a gala dinner in Sydney on June 18th, 2005, and whereas Sydney Lodge 84 has a distinguished record of service in Cape Breton that its Lodge brothers, past and present, can be proud of, therefore be it resolved that the members of this legislature congratulate Sydney Lodge number 84 and its Lodge members, past and present, on their outstanding achievements for the past 100 years. I would ask for a waiver of notice.
Request for waivers is agreed. All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Where today is Mac Happy Day, an annual fundraiser by McDonald Restaurants to aid children's charities. And whereas since 1977, the organization has held this special one-day event and raised more than $20 million for children's charities across Canada. And whereas after today's event, the donations through the various efforts of the organizations by the staff of more than 1,375 McDonald restaurants across the country, that total will rise significantly. Therefore, be it resolved that members of the House congratulate the efforts today by McDonald Restaurant to support over 200 charities and some 184,000 children who will benefit from this special tradition. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver and passage without debate.
Request for waivers is agreed. All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Member for Halifax, Needham.
I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Miss Wendy Lee Portress is a native of Halifax and a sixth-generation Canadian who grew up in Uniacke Square and was the first person in her family to earn a university degree. And whereas Miss Porteous is a grade 3 teacher.
Order, please. There's too much noise in the chamber. I ask the members to take their conversations outside, please. The Honourable Member for Halifax, Needham.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Whereas Miss Porteous is a grade 3 teacher at Joseph House School, whose students learn that everyone has a history of which to be proud, and also that everyone should respect and honor all the cultures and heritages which have contributed to today's Nova Scotia. And whereas her fellow staff members at Joseph House School have recently recognized Ms. Porteous' dedication and accomplishments and have declared that they are proud to have her as a colleague. Therefore, be it resolved that the Nova Scotia Legislature thank Wendy Lee Porteous for her commitment to her community and her dedication to her students. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of motion and passage without debate.
Request for waivers is agreed. All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Member for Timberlea Prospect.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the following resolution. Whereas the community pharmacy on the Prospect Road in Hatchet Lake has been in business for many years at its present location and previously in Prospect Bay, and whereas Susan Rushton has been employed as a pharmacist at the community pharmacy since her graduation from Dal's School of Pharmacy in 1980, and whereas Susan and her husband Eric, daughter Sarah, son Mark, and family dog Dawson are longtime residents of Hatchet Lake. Therefore, be it resolved the Nova Scotia Legislature congratulates Susan Rushton on her 25 years with the community pharmacy and wish her all the best for the future. I ask for waiver and passage without debate, Mr. Speaker.
Request for waivers is agreed. All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. Order, please. Question period begin at 2:38 and end at 4:18. The Honourable Member for Halifax, Needham. 408. Just see if you're paying attention. You really were. That's good. I tried. The Honourable Member for Halifax, Needham.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question through you is to the Premier. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to table a letter written to the Premier by Joe Brennan, the chair of the Coalition of Residential Councils. Ms. Brennan wrote her letter in response to the $10 a month increase in personal use allowance for residents of nursing home care who are grandparented into the old fee structure for long-term care. As Ms. Brennan points out, this increase is too little, too late, Mr. Speaker. So I want to ask the Premier, why did you fail to live up to your 11th hour election promise to seniors and offer a meaningful increase in personal use allowance?
The Honourable the Premier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And yes, I do remember the letter. It was in my mail file as well as the Honourable Members. We did make a commitment, I personally made a commitment, that the government would increase the personal allowance in long-term care facilities, and we have done that, Mr. Speaker. In addition, we have provided an option to go to the new plan, which is $200 a month as well. In addition to that, Mr. Speaker, we have provided increased flexibility within the original system, and in addition, Mr. Speaker, we have allowed purchases against that allowance that were previously not available to the residents.
Now, member for Halifax Needham on your first supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, let's not forget these seniors are staying on the old system because this government extracted every penny they had to pay for their health care costs in these nursing homes to begin with. As Ms. Brennan says, a reasonable increase would have been an act of good faith, a small price to pay for the unfair way these seniors were treated. So my question again to the Premier, why, when his government was putting together this budget, didn't he take the opportunity to live up to his promise to nursing home residents?
The Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And if memory serves me correctly, I believe the amount suggested in that letter, unless I have my correspondence mixed, was an increase of $50. Mr. Speaker, when you sit on this side of the floor and you have a lot of demands and you're committed to a balanced budget, sometimes you don't have the resources to do as much as you would like on any specific issue. But I made a commitment, Mr. Speaker, and the commitment was kept. And the government, Mr. Speaker, if we can continue to grow revenues and if we can continue to survive, will continue to look at that issue.
Now, member for Halifax Needham on your final supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Premier may have forgotten his promise to residents, but Joe Brennan and other seniors, they haven't forgotten, Mr. Speaker. $115 a month will still be insufficient to pay for phone calls, haircuts, transportation, and personal needs. So my final question to the Premier is, when will you listen to people like Joe Brennan and other nursing home residents and offer a reasonable increase in personal use allowances for this group of seniors?
The Honourable Premier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And the government is aware that a commitment has been made. The government has addressed the commitment, obviously not to the satisfaction of everyone. Mr. Speaker, the government is aware of the issue, and as funds become available over the years ahead, we will address all of those issues as far as revenues allow us.
The Honourable Member for Annapolis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Earlier this month, I sent a newsletter to my constituents. Contained in this newsletter was some information on the Senior Pharmacare Program, which specifically outlined that any senior receiving the GIS did not have to pay a premium. 10 people, and this number is growing, in my riding, discovered that they were paying a premium when they didn't have to. So my question to the Minister of Health is, why are some seniors who are receiving the Guaranteed Income Supplement paying a pharmacare premium?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member raised a question which I'd be very happy to look into if you provide me with the details.
The honourable member for Annapolis on your first supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This issue prompted me to investigate for my constituents the concern a little further. I contacted the Seniors Pharmacare Program office and obtained the 3 forms, which I'll table here today, Mr. Speaker, that are sent to seniors prior to their 65th birthday. And nowhere on any of these forms does it state that if you're receiving the GIS, you do not have to pay a premium. So my question is, why do we make it so hard for low-income seniors to take advantage of not having to pay the $390 premium?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, we certainly want to make things as easy as we can for seniors, and I'll be quite happy to look at the forms to see if they need revision.
The Honourable Member for Annapolis on your final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for that. I have no doubt that there are countless more seniors who have been needlessly paying a pharmacare premium because they haven't been giving the proper information. Mr. Speaker, this practice is costing those who can least afford it hundreds of dollars, and it is simply not fair. So my question to the minister is, are you prepared to retroactively reimburse all low-income seniors who have been paying a premium as a result of the lack of information on application forms?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I've already indicated that I would be quite happy to examine the forms and to ensure that we're making things as easy as we can for seniors, because it's very important that the seniors of this province, all of them, be able to take full advantage of the most comprehensive pharmacare program that exists anywhere in the region.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia. During the energy crisis in the 1970s and the early 1980s, financial incentives were offered to homeowners by the federal government to better insulate their homes. One of these insulations touted by the federal government was zonolite. Today we know that some zonolite was produced using vermiculite, contaminated with asbestos, a known carcinogen, Mr. Speaker. Right. The federal government has so far refused to take any action on the issue, and looking at the provincial website, I was unable to find any information about this topic. So my question to the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia, what steps are being taken by the province to warn residents of this potential danger that may be lurking in Nova Scotia's attics?
There you go. Honourable Minister of Service, Nova Scotia, and Municipal Relations.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for the question. The member was correct. He would find no information on the Access Nova Scotia website, primarily because that is the responsibility of Industry Canada. It is their responsibility to regulate the sale of products and services in Canada, Mr. Speaker, and that's why Nova Scotia government does not participate in that action.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid on your first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, my question now, I guess, is for the Minister of Community Services. Since the department's business plan states that most public housing is 30 years old or older, I would think that it's safe to say that zonolite may have well been used in the construction of many of these units that the province owns and is posing a threat to the current residents. So my question to the Minister of Community Services, what steps have been taken or undertaken to audit public housing for the use of zonolite, and what plans have been laid out to protect these current residents?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
I appreciate the question. I was not aware of this substance, but I will check with my staff. There is an annual audit taken of all the public housing units, and I will get the honourable member an answer.
Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid on your final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister of Community Services. So I'll again return to the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia. With the dangerous void in the federal policy on this issue, it's up to the province to protect Nova Scotians, Mr. Speaker. Homeowners like Mike Hiltz and his neighbours in Chester know they have zonolite in their attics, and they want answers. Yeah. So my question to the Minister, when will this government institute a program to aid Nova Scotia homeowners in testing and, if needed, the removal of zonolite from their homes?
The Honourable Minister of Service, Nova Scotia, and Municipal Relations.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I would say to the member opposite, the federal government has left many voids, including in national defence. It's not this province's responsibility to set up its own army and its own navy, Mr. Speaker. It is a responsibility of Industry Canada, Mr. Speaker. It is their jurisdiction, and they have to deal with it. And I would agree with the member opposite. They need to do something about it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now a member for Halifax Citadel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yesterday we learned that Great Canadian Gaming was prepared to spend millions of dollars for the Halifax and Sydney casinos. Yesterday, the Premier said outside the House that negotiations between the Gaming Corporation and Great Canadian Gaming had not yet begun. However, the company has had talks with the Gaming Corporation. My question for the Premier, when did talks begin between the Gaming Corporation and representatives of the Great Canadian Gaming, and what was the substance of those discussions?
The Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I refer that to the minister responsible for the file.
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and the honourable member is quite correct. Great Canadian did announce that they were purchasing the assets of the casino in both Halifax and Sydney. when they started talking was perhaps some months ago. No doubt Great Canadian have been doing some due diligence and looking at the facilities. How long that's been, I don't know, but in the last few months, the Gaming Corporation and Great Canadian have had preliminary talks. But I will remind everybody, Mr. Speaker, the sale and the agreement was not between the Gaming Corporation and Great Canadian. It was between two corporations. So how long they were talking, I just simply can't speak for, Mr.
Now, a member for Halifax Citadel on your first supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That brings me to the second question, which relates to exactly the point that the minister was just raising, and that is that there is an operating agreement, which is the subject of discussions between the Gaming Corporation and Great Canadian Gaming. In late January of this year, the government passed on its option to purchase the casinos. My second question for the Premier, is he prepared to confirm or deny that in fact the Gaming Corporation talked to Great Canadian Gaming around 3 months ago and did in fact negotiate an operating agreement with that company?
The Honourable the Premier.
I refer that to the minister responsible.
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And the Gaming Corporation, as I indicated, has been talking with Great Canadian over the last number of months. They've been talking about a whole variety of things. Mr. Speaker, what the Gaming Corporation wanted everybody in this province to know, and the Great Canadian Corporation, is what we were doing and how we were moving on our gaming strategy, so they would be completely aware. Mr. Speaker, we're excited about the fact that we have a new company there that has a spirit of cooperation and will want to work in consultation. So we see that as very positive for the future.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Citadel on your final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll take my cue from the minister's comments about a spirit of cooperation, and my final supplementary is a rather straightforward one. Is the Premier or the Minister willing to table before this House all correspondence, internal and external, regarding talks between his Gaming Corporation and Great Canadian Gaming?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I will stress again for the Honourable Member, this sale is between two corporations, not between the province and the Gaming Corporation. It's two corporate entities that have entered into this agreement. Mr. Speaker, I haven't any correspondence from them. They are a separate company and they are able to do those things. So the request that the Honourable Member has, he will have to ask those corporations for.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is through you to the Premier. Your government has refused to listen to the requests of retail gasoline dealers across the province to regulate gas prices and to save their livelihoods. There are nearly 50 retail gasoline dealers in the gallery today who have come here to make their voices heard. They have decided to bring their concerns directly to this House, since your government has ignored their pleas for so long. 28 stations have closed down in the past few months, and up to 100 more could be closed by the end of this year, without a system of price regulation being established. So my question, Mr. Speaker, for the Premier is this. Why does your government continue to ignore the will of the people and of independent retailers to bring in gas regulation?
The Honourable the Premier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The government and this member are very, very aware that the providing of service in rural Nova Scotia is becoming increasingly problematic. It was with that in mind, Mr. Speaker, that 1 year ago, this government tabled in this House the Gasoline Pricing Protection Act, a piece of legislation, Mr. Speaker, that would give the government the legislative authority to deal with these issues. Mr. Speaker, that piece of legislation is stuck in the House. If the opposition parties are prepared to move it along, the government is prepared to allow that to happen.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on your first supplementary.
Well, if the Premier is prepared to accept the substance of our bill and theirs, then we're prepared to move it forward, Mr. Speaker. But the reality is the government's stubborn refusal to work in good faith with other members of this legislature to deal with the problem is having tragic consequences for independent retailers across the province. While this government sits around and points fingers, retailers are going out of business and consumers are losing out in the process. So, Mr. Speaker, my question for the Premier is, why are they forcing rural retailers out of business through their failure to act?
The Honourable the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I'll go back to my first answer. The member opposite suggested that 28 stations went out of business in the last 12 months. And Mr. Speaker, I have no doubt that that is true. I know where some of those stations are. Mr. Speaker, there's been a bill before the House for 1 year. 1 year, Mr. Speaker, that will allow these issues to be addressed. If the opposition parties are serious about having this issue addressed, they will allow the government's bill to move through the House.
Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, you know all too well that the government refuses to actually call that bill. The Premier, I believe, owes retailers and consumers an explanation for his government's refusal to act. There are many retailers in the gallery today, and at a minimum, he owes them a meeting to discuss this issue face to face. So, Mr. Speaker, my question for the Premier is, will he personally meet with these retailers after question period today? Yes or no?
The Honourable the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition suggested it is the government that has stalled the bill. Mr. Speaker, the resolution on May the 19th, 2004 it was moved by Mr. MacDonald that Bill 79 be stood. Mr. Speaker, Mr. MacDonald is not a member of this government.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, there are some dedicated...
Order, please. Order, please. Order, please. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Health. Some very dedicated home care workers are here in the gallery today to bring awareness to the public of the poor working conditions that they face each and every day. These are frontline healthcare professionals who must work over 12 hours a day just to bank 7 hours of pay. Sometimes the pay is less depending on travel time. If an appointment is canceled, the agency and the worker don't get paid. So my question for the Minister of Health through you, Mr. Speaker, is why hasn't his department done more to improve the working conditions in the home care sector?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and we continuously try to improve working conditions wherever we can. And I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, one of the major initiatives that we have going is the consultation with Nova Scotians, and working conditions and ensuring that people are able to stay in their homes longer is one of the major objectives of that consultation.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on your first supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, workers are on call every day. They never know when they're going to get a day off. They're frequently called in for overtime and unscheduled hours because of problems with injuries and sick time among staff. Most of these workers are women. Home care is a career area where community services push many female single parents on income assistance. Yet they face continued poverty due to the working conditions. So my question for the Minister of Health through you, Mr. Speaker, is how can he offer quality home care to Nova Scotia when workers can't afford to stay in the profession?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services. Order, please. Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank the honourable member for the question. Mr. Speaker, as I indicated previously, we're always trying to strive to improve conditions. Our objective is to keep people in their homes longer. In order to do that, we need to have an effective workforce that can care for people when they're in their homes, and that is the objective that we want to work toward, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on your final supplementary.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Home care workers should not have to live with split shifts, long hours, no pay for travel time as a condition of employment. This government's failure to address skyrocketing insurance rates and the rising fuel costs also take money out of the workers' pockets. So, Mr. Speaker, my final question to the Minister of Health is, when is his department going to create stable, predictable hours and pay models for home care workers in this province?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
We increase the pay scale.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, the very nature of the work that is done is one that's very difficult to predict. Very difficult to predict the demand and when services are going to be required. Nevertheless, Mr. Speaker, the need for us to work toward improved conditions for those who provide the service as well as those who are receiving the service is a primary objective, and will continue to work toward that end.
Honourable member for Glace Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yesterday it was revealed that the Capital Health District was losing one of this country's top cardiac anesthesiologists. The minister indicated to the media, and I quote, "Capital Health have indicated to us that they have no specific knowledge of anyone that is leaving." Well, Mr. Minister, that's not exactly true now, is it? Mr. Speaker, the health care crisis is in full swing, and it won't be resolved until the Minister of Health finally gets a handle on what's going on. My question to the Minister is, could the Minister please tell the House whether or not he is aware that Capital Health is losing one of its top anesthesiologists in the country?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. When asked the question yesterday, I provided the information I had at that time. I have verbal indications today that an anesthesiologist has provided verbal indications to Capital Health of his intention to practice elsewhere. Mr. Speaker, that nothing has been in writing, no official notification has been given, and Mr. Speaker, there is also no indication that this individual is in fact leaving the province.
The Honourable member for Glace Bay on your first supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the sad reality here is that the minister doesn't seem to know what's going on at all. The crisis has a lot to do with money, much more to deal with the absolute lack of planning on the part of this government. What we have are highly skilled specialists who are leaving the system. We have ER closures, and we have a human resources crisis now, Mr. Speaker. There are real problems with the system, and the minister is just burying his head in the sand, and the Premier throws up his hands and says, "We have a crisis." Well, Mr. Speaker, my question to the minister is, what specifically is the minister going to do to speed up the recruitment process so that Capital District and other regions have the specialists that are required to do the job?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, if it's a resource issue in terms of dollars, I can tell you one thing we're not doing is cutting $140 million out of the health budget. Mr. Speaker, that's not what we're doing. Mr. Speaker, we have put in place an alternate funding program which most find attractive. It's a program that is particularly attractive to young graduates and allows them to set up practice, and that has been found to be effective in terms of recruitment. Mr. Speaker, what the honourable member fails to share with all members of the House and the people of this province, that the shortage of anesthesiologists is not unique to Nova Scotia. It is a national problem, international in nature, and Mr. Speaker, we will be competitive in terms of recruitment within that environment.
The honourable member for Glace Bay on your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, what the minister doesn't need to do is try and hide behind a statement that has never been made, and try and hide behind that supposed statement. What the minister needs to do is start disclosing what's going on in his government. Mr. Speaker, there is a veil of secrecy that is descending on health care in this province, in particular Capital Health and the entire health system. Nova Scotians need full disclosure as to the extent of the health care crisis in this province. We're losing our best now and our brightest, and we could lose more, and the Minister of Health doesn't even know what's going on, Mr. Speaker.
Question, please.
My question to the Minister, Mr. Speaker.
Order, please. The honourable member for Glace Bay.
My question to the Minister, Mr. Speaker, is will the Minister please tell Nova Scotian then how many anesthesiologists are leaving Capital Health and how many have been recruited since January?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, what I can tell the honourable member is that we're not running from any statement that we've made. We're not trying to mix up any statements that we've made. We're very clear about what we've meant. We provided an additional $218 million for health care in this province this year, Mr. Speaker. We will use that money to recruit anesthesiologists, and other healthcare professionals, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday we had made an announcement with the College of Physicians and Surgeons that's going to give us the potential of attracting another 40 doctors to this province, Mr. Speaker. The potential to be able to keep them here, that, Mr. Speaker, is performance, and that is where this government is going, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I have a question that has to do with respect for our seniors, and it's for the Minister of Health. In 2002, I asked the Minister of the day about the involuntary separation form that couples must sign if one of them is entering a nursing home. The form is designed to notify the federal government that the couple is living in separate residences, which impacts on their pension and other benefit amounts. Nova Scotia has chosen to word these forms in a way that is so disturbing to seniors. In fact, many of them, Mr. Speaker, who have been married for decades. My question to the current Minister of Health is this. It has been nearly 3 years since we raised this issue. Why hasn't the department changed the wording?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, in all of the encounters we have with our clients and candidates for seniors' homes, we attempt to be as open and forthcoming as we can be with all of them, so that they fully understand the circumstances in which they're involved. Mr. Speaker, we are, with the Cost of Care Initiative, carrying out a very careful analysis of the implementation of that program, and all facets of it will be examined, Mr. Speaker, including the reference made by the honourable member.
Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition, on your first supplementary.
Well, with all respect to the Minister, Mr. Speaker, I don't believe he understands the issue. It has to do with involuntary separation. And we checked with the federal government, and they actually don't care what the wording is. They just want to have noted that the couple is living apart. The key issue in Nova Scotia is the phrase, "We wish to change our marital status." This notion of changing marital status is what bothers many seniors. It does not have to be worded that way. The option was presented to the Minister of Health 3 years ago, so I asked the Minister, because members of your own caucus have written this government about the issue, why has it gone unaddressed?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's a very good question, Mr. Speaker. It sounds to me like I need to find a lawyer that can give me the appropriate advice that would allow the change to occur.
Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition, on your final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I tabled in this House on a previous occasion the wording that Saskatchewan has chosen. And it says, "My spouse and I live in separate dwellings for reasons beyond our control. However, our marital status has not changed." Very, very simple change, Mr. Speaker. So I want to ask the Minister why he won't adopt this language, which is far less upsetting for seniors, for couples who are already going through the stress of a nursing home admission.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I hope I've gotten the legal advice I require to make the necessary changes.
Now, member for Cape Breton, Nova.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, through you, my question is to the Minister of Health Promotion. Mr. Speaker, the Activity Communities Coordinator in Cape Breton, Brianna Lynch, has written to members of every party in this House because she's concerned about liability insurance. I'd like to table a letter. She's concerned because Cape Breton Victoria Regional School Board, like other boards in this province, now requires community groups to have liability insurance before they use the school. The high cost of liability insurance is preventing groups from getting active. My question through you, Mr. Speaker, is to the Minister of Health Promotion is, what have you been doing to deal with the liability insurance problems community groups face across this province?
The Honourable Minister of Health Promotion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and my colleague is working on that particular file, and I'll refer to the Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would think that the honourable member would be aware that we have put in place a committee that is investigating liability insurance for those organizations and individuals that provide volunteer services.
Honourable member for Cape Breton Nova on your first supplementary.
That's been quite a while, Mr. Speaker, and there's still no kids in the gym. Mr. Speaker, Cape Breton's Activity Community Coordinator says her school board's liability insurance requirement is preventing individuals and groups from participating in recreation and physical activities. The same can be said for some of the other boards across the province. Liability insurance has been a problem for a long time, yet this government takes a back seat and allows insurance companies to investigate themselves. My question to the Minister of Health Promotion is, in the interest of public health, when are you going to start pushing your government to take control of this issue?
The Honourable Minister of Health Promotion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And as my colleague said, the committee is doing the work which needs to be done, Mr. Speaker. Indeed, there are many opportunities that we are providing through health promotion and through education on this very issue. There's no government, Mr. Speaker, in recent years that has taken such initiatives as we have, through Active Kids, Healthy Kids, through initiatives and after-school programs, through our schools, Mr. Speaker, and we'll continue our work with respect to that, Mr. Speaker.
Please. The Honourable member Cape Breton Nova on your final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's just taking a little too long, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Nova Scotians have the worst health rates in this country. One of the best things we can do to improve our health and lower present and future health care costs in this province of Nova Scotia is to get more active. So my question is for the Minister of Health Promotion. How much longer do you plan to allow insurance companies to stand in the way of public health?
The Honourable Minister of Health Promotion.
Mr. Speaker, I refer that to the Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
Mr. Speaker, I can assure the honourable member that we are very aware of the problem faced by volunteer organizations, by schools and individuals, and that we are taking steps to alleviate that problem, and I would expect that very shortly we will have a program in place.
The Honourable member for Glace Bay.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Health. Earlier today, Mr. Speaker, we revealed information showing that emergency rooms across this province have been closed a total of 13,449 hours. Mr. Speaker, the fact that emergency rooms throughout this province have been closed for a total of 560.4 days, or over a year and a half in the last 5 years, is unbelievable. And to that total, Mr. Speaker, you can add another 33 hours because New Waterford Consolidated announced just today 3 more days' worth of closures. My question to the Minister of Health, how is this acceptable?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And the implication of the honourable member is that we consider it to be acceptable, which is not the case. Mr. Speaker, we understand that what we need to do is to attract the required professionals to be able to ensure that our operating rooms are operating at top efficiency, and Mr. Speaker, that is what we are committed to do. Now, Mr. Speaker, the issue, of course, relates to resources, and it's human resources that we're talking about, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Glace Bay on your first supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Minister stated yesterday that the Clinician Assessment for Practice Program, or CAP as it's known, is going to solve the problem for a lack of doctors in rural Nova Scotia. That program requires family physicians to mentor internationally trained family doctors. And in addition to heavy caseloads, manning the ER with reduced human resources, in addition to that comes responsibility. So, while I have no doubt that many physicians will rise to the challenge, Mr. Speaker, the fact remains those doctors are still under a great deal of strain. So my question to the Minister, can the Minister guarantee that these communities, from Spring Hill to New Waterford, from Shelburne to the Strait area, will have access, those communities chronically impacted by ER closures will have access and will benefit from the CAP program?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. When you're bringing into the system people with the potential to be able to provide medical services, Mr. Speaker, the fact that 20% of someone's time is being taken to act as a mentor is not a deterrent to that individual, because they recognize by investing that time they're going to free up individuals who can provide practice to their communities. That, Mr. Speaker, is an investment, and I have every confidence that that will be how it will be viewed by potential mentors across this province. And, Mr. Speaker, I can certainly assure all honourable members that every area of this province will have an opportunity to take advantage of the CAP program. And I didn't at any time ever suggest that it was the solution, but it is a very significant assist.
Member Glace Bay, and your final supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's a fairly tall order, I know, because when you're looking at over a year and a half, over 13,400 hours that people in this province have gone without access to an emergency room, I want to know, how will the minister assure then that those communities that are facing chronic ER closures will have first crack at the physicians who are coming in under such a program?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I can tell the honourable member that there has been very carefully drafted out a list of locations throughout the province where shortages exist. That information is being made available through the district health authorities. The candidates who are coming forward for CAP will have an opportunity to interact with the district health authorities. The district health authorities know where their shortages are. Mr. Speaker, this is a real opportunity for those district health authorities to be able to address their shortages for medical personnel in the long term, Mr. Speaker. One of the most significant steps forwards we've made in the recruitment issue in this province for quite some time, Mr. Speaker. And the College of Physicians and Surgeons deserves full credit, along with Doctors Nova Scotia, for the implementation of this very worthwhile program.
Order, please, Member for Halifax Fairview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister responsible for the Insurance Act. Mr. Speaker, insurance companies across the province are using the Conservative Liberal insurance cap to strong-arm clients into unfair settlements. I want to table a form letter sent to victims of car accidents from Aviva Insurance. This letter is clearly intended to pressure victims into accepting a minor injury settlement. The victim from whom we received this particular letter suffered a broken wrist, a broken sternum, a rib fracture, and a partially collapsed lung. My first question for the minister: does the minister consider a broken wrist, a broken sternum, a rib fracture, and a partially collapsed lung to be a minor injury?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
Mr. Speaker, I'd remind the honourable member that I didn't graduate from medical school.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Fairview, and your first supplementary.
Ron, they're not doctors, they're not lawyers.
Mr. Speaker, the condition of the minister's voice has led him to give uncharacteristically brief answers. Mr. Speaker, here is what Aviva Insurance wants from all victims that they claim have suffered a minor injury. They want a medical examination by a doctor of Aviva's choosing, family doctor records for the last 5 years, complete clinical notes of all specialists, a complete copy of the individual's employment file, the last 5 years of tax returns, names and addresses of family members, friends, and co-workers, and a complete MSI printout for the last 5 years. Mr. Speaker, when will the minister admit that insurance companies are laughing all the way to the bank at the expense of injured Nova Scotians?
Now, the Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
Mr. Speaker, if my voice permitted me to shout, I would love to answer that question, but I'm going to offer the question to my colleague, the Minister of Justice.
Minister of Justice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I can indicate to the honourable member, as he's well aware, it has been common practice in the settlement of insurance claims in this province for many, many years before the recent legislation for insurance companies to request information because they are being asked to compensate the person injured based on the nature and extent of those injuries and the source of those injuries, Mr. Speaker. And how can they do that without proper medical information being provided to them so they can assess the claim and pay the claim according to law?
Now, member for Halifax Fairview, and your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, that minister practiced insurance law. I practice insurance law. The leader of the opposition practiced insurance law. We all know that this is new and has come in only since that government instituted this cap. Mr. Speaker, this cap, this conservative liberal cap, is being used to bully, intimidate, and pressure the victims of car accidents in this province. Newfoundland and Labrador has looked at the problem and they have rejected outright the idea of a cap because they say it's not fair, it's not reasonable, it's not right. So my final question to the minister, when will this government take the side of injured Nova Scotians and cut the cap?
There you go.
Now, Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
Mr. Speaker, I hate to keep on reminding the honourable member, but we have in Nova Scotia the lowest auto insurance rates in Canada. And Mr. Speaker, that came about because of the plan which we put in place in the year 2003.
The honourable member for Glace Bay.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, while many communities throughout this province experience ER closures...
Order, please. The honourable member for Glace Bay has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, while many communities throughout this province experience ER closures as a result of a lack of physicians, Fisherman's Memorial Hospital in Lunenburg rather stands out because it's a lack of nurses that was the reason for the closure at the ER at Fisherman's Memorial on April 16th, 17th, and 18th of this year. Now, for many in the community, Mr. Speaker, that caused a great deal of concern, and for this government, I imagine it was quite the wake-up call. So my question to the minister is, was this specific incident of not having enough nurses at Fisherman's Memorial just an isolated incident, or will it happen again?
Honourable Minister of Health.
They come out 140 million more.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I consider myself to have been blessed with a few talents, but foreseeing the future is not one of them.
Honourable member for Glace Bay on your first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, your Premier doesn't have that talent either, but he all of a sudden declared a crisis in health care the other day. Mr. Speaker, you know, we were alarmed when we heard that a lack of nurses forced the closure of the ER at Fisherman's Memorial, and while we know that a lack of nurses is a problem there, we're concerned about whether or not the minister has his finger on the pulse of our facilities in this province and other facilities. So I'll ask the minister to confirm here today that there are sufficient nurses working in our emergency rooms and that a lack of nurses will not become just another reason why ERs are closing in this province.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
To leave Nova Scotia.
Mr. Speaker, I can tell the honourable member and tell the members of the House and the people of this province that when we came to power in 1999, 50% of the nurses who were graduating in this province were leaving the province. Currently, 80% of the nurses who graduate from this province are employed in this province, and over 90% of them get full-time employment, Mr. Speaker. That's a major step forward, and it will assist us in addressing the concerns raised by the honourable member.
Honourable member for Glace Bay, and your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, when you have an emergency room in the Strait area closed for the last 5 months, when you have prolonged closures that go from New Waterford, Spring Hill, Shelburne, Glace Bay, and you call that a success story, Mr. Minister, you should be ashamed of yourself. Mr. Minister, in a Chronicle Herald article dated April 15th, it was stated that the CEO of the South Shore District Health Authority met with the hospital board and told them that he's considering closing Fisherman's Memorial overnight on a permanent basis. And Mr. Speaker, given that this legislature is never privy to DHA business plans during the budget process, I'll ask the minister, could the minister confirm then whether the emergency room at Fisherman's Memorial will be closing overnight or on a permanent basis?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And the honourable member likes to create concerns, and I can tell the honourable member and members of the House that that ER will remain open as it is now, Mr. Speaker. That's the intent of this government, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the people of this province need to consider the source of the questions. Questions coming from a party whose leader has said he would strip $140 million from the health care budget of this province, Mr. Speaker. Coming from a party, Mr. Speaker, coming from a party which, when in government, chase the nurses out of this province, chase the doctors out of this province, Mr. Speaker. That's the source of the questions that are coming from here. We have a plan and we'll implement that plan, Mr. Speaker.
Now a member for Pictou West. Order. Order. Order, please. Order, please. Now member for Pictou West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question through you is to the Minister of Transportation. Nova Scotians depend on salt trucks and plows of the department to provide safe transportation throughout our province. But it's been recently brought to my attention that trucks purchased by the department for use in plowing and salting are exceeding the recommended front axle weights. And during this past winter, many trucks across Nova Scotia had to remove their wings or their plows in order to meet the weights. In fact, in Antigonish and Guysborough County, every truck came in overweight. This could be serious for safety in this province. So my question, Mr. Speaker, to the Minister, how did this happen, and how could you buy trucks that don't meet the requirements of the department?
Minister of Transportation, Public Works.
Mr. Speaker, the trucks that we are presently buying do meet the requirements with regard to front axle weights. Trucks that we have, and they're few in number, that do exceed those weights will be modified probably at Millers Lake.
Now a member for Pictou West on your first supplementary.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, to the Minister, I understand that the department is currently in talks with the manufacturer on this and see if it can be repaired. And perhaps if more discussion had taken place ahead of time, we wouldn't have had this problem. But anyhow, it's certainly going to cost some money to the department to fix up the problem, and that money has to come from somewhere. So my question, Mr. Speaker, to the Minister, what is the estimated cost to fix this problem?
There you go. Minister of Transportation, Public Works.
Mr. Speaker, I cannot give the member a dollar and cents figure at this present moment, but however, Mr. Speaker, I'll have that forwarded to the member when we have the figure.
Honourable member for Pictou West on your final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I understand that it's going to be quite costly to modify these vehicles, and there's a fair number of them, so I'm told. So it's not going to be cheap. But so, as I mentioned, Mr. Speaker, the money has to come from somewhere. So there's probably going to mean some cuts in your department. Is it going to be cuts at the staffing level? Is it going to be cuts in ditching or brush cutting? Is it going to be in road maintenance? Mr. Speaker, which part of the department's budget is going to be cut to pay for this miscue?
Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
Mr. Speaker.
Order, please. Minister of Transportation and Public Works has the floor.
The member is playing henny penny again. The sky is not falling. We have sufficient money in the budget to take care of those repairs as well as the essential operations of the department.
The honourable member for Victoria the Lakes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Honourable Minister of Transportation. In January 2000, one of Inverness County's finest, John Morris Rankin, lost his life when his vehicle went off the dangerous stretch of the Whale Cove Road and down the steep incline. The residents of the Whale Cove area in Inverness County have been begging and pleading with the Department of Transportation for over 5 years for a guardrail to be erected and have consistently been turned down by the department. So my question to the Minister, and in respect for his voice being very bad today, I will accept a simple yes. When will you do the right thing and erect a guardrail on this dangerous stretch of road?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation, Public Works.
That's very kind of the honourable member. Trying to protect me. That's wonderful. Mr. Speaker, I can advise the honourable member that actually that area, there is a lot of erosion taking place on the bank, as the member is probably well aware. And because of that, we are doing a reassessment of that area as to see whether or not it would fall in the necessary criteria for the erection of guard railing.
Now, member for Victoria the Lakes on your first supplementary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The erosion has taken place simply because, Mr. Speaker, the Inverness County Council has petitioned the Honourable Minister's Department on at least 14 occasions and have been refused 14 times. And the residents have tried time and time again to be heard on this serious safety issue. They've written letters, they've had meetings with the regional director of the department, and they've requested assistance through you, Mr. Minister, and their local MLA, who is a minister of this government. And they've been consistently told no. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm just wondering, why is the minister refusing the residents of the area to keep them safe?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
Mr. Speaker, we consider every person or every organization that appeals to the department for guardrailing. We consider that request very seriously. There are Canadian standards for and criteria for the erection of guardrails. We observe those criteria and in this province. And Mr. Speaker, at the last inspection that we did of the area, that area did not meet the criteria necessary for the erection of guardrailing.
The honourable member for Victoria the Lakes on your final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what I intend to do is for the benefit of the House and the Honourable Minister, is to table these pictures of the situation to show the gravity, just how dangerous that this area is and how quickly it needs to be taken action. So, Mr. Speaker, my final question to the ministers: when will you listen to their pleas and do the right thing for the residents of Whale Cove? Look at these pictures and decide, yes, that you will install the guardrail, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
Mr. Speaker, it's nice to have pictures. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Tourism and Culture has brought this matter to my attention on many occasions, and he's well aware of what we're doing to try and assist in the matter. And as I said, there is currently another assessment being made in view of the further erosion of the cliff in that area.
The honourable member for Dartmouth South Portland Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Community Services. The Minister signed a bilateral agreement in principle for early learning and childcare on Monday. Nova Scotia's version of the deal has a glaring omission, however. Other provinces committed to significant improvements to the wages paid to early childhood educators as an important building block in creating a quality early learning and childcare system. I asked the Minister, why didn't Nova Scotia specifically commit to raising the wages of early childhood educators?
Now the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the member's opposite interest in the child care agreement and what we're doing with it. And I think, as I've said before in this House, we are working with the sector to try to focus on how we can best invest those dollars. That is clearly something that will be part of the solution. But I want to focus that, number one, we are concerned about family and children, and especially the lowest income children in this province that might not otherwise have access to adequate early learning and child care. That is our number one priority.
The honourable member for Dartmouth South Portland Valley on your first supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Both national and international research indicates that the higher wages that you pay early childhood educators, the better quality of system that you have. Right. So, Mr. Speaker, almost all of these child care professionals are women. They love their work, but they face difficult working conditions and low wages. In fact, even the executive directors of child care centres in Nova Scotia get the same wages as an orderly at the QE2. Stabilization grants did not bring stability to the sector, and in many cases it did not improve wages or benefits. Many centres gave one-time bonuses instead of increasing hourly rates of pay. So my question to the Minister, why do these professional educators continue to be undercompensated for their work?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the substance of the member's questions. I think this is very constructive. Mr. Speaker, the honourable member would be pleased to know that the other focus that we're putting on these new child care monies, which actually was going ahead regardless of whether we got the additional monies, but that certainly makes it a lot easier for everybody, is to look at an operating grant type system to supplement the operations of all full-time registered daycare operations in the province, and we hope that this will make a significant difference in their ability to compete for early childhood educators and be able to retain them.
The honourable member for Dartmouth South, Portland Valley, on your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, actually I'm delighted that the minister has raised this issue of operational funding, because other provinces have made a commitment to use the new federal funds to enhance nonprofit delivery of child care. Yet this minister is determined to share federal funding with commercial operations, which increases the risk of large commercial interests taking over our current for-profit operations. So I ask the minister, how does he intend to stabilize nonprofit centres while protecting our province from the large commercial big box child care operators?
Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I bear responsibility for all registered or regulated child care operators in this province. And Mr. Speaker, about half of them are commercial, about half are nonprofit. And it seems to me that parents are making the choice as to where they want to send their children, and I bear responsibility for assisting all of them so that they can have access to these resources to help families and children, especially low-income families that need access to regulated early learning and child care.
The honourable member for Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question, Mr. Speaker, is for the Minister of Economic Development. Mr. Speaker, several months ago, the Cape Breton Regional Municipality signed a 20-year contract with the municipality of Guysborough to ship its garbage to the municipality of Guysborough, some 3,000 tons a year to be transported. And yet the manner of transporting this garbage has yet to be decided. So my question to the Minister is, will the Minister of Economic Development commit to communicating with officials of the Cape Breton Regional Municipality on the importance of using the Cape Breton and Central Railroad to transport that garbage?
The Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and through you to the honourable member. Certainly, there has been a great effort and support by this government and other members of the House to see that critical piece of infrastructure, the Cape Breton Nova Scotia Railway, stay in place. And one of the key concerns is finding the volume of traffic to go over that rail, and certainly would the opportunity to see that particular waste transported by rail would very much help the business case of the railway, and we will continue those discussions.
The honourable member for Cape Breton West on your first supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my first supplementary is for the Minister of Transportation and Public Works. Mr. Speaker, transporting this garbage by rail is far more safer. It's certainly environmentally safer than transporting by truck. And we all know that the Mayor and the Regional Council has demanded that the province maintain this railroad. It has also been the demand of the MLAs from Cape Breton to keep this railroad operational. So my question to the Minister is, would he as well impress upon Cape Breton Regional Municipality officials and the local MLAs the need to use the railroad to transport this garbage?
Honourable Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I welcome that question because, Mr. Speaker, as you're probably aware, the greatest wear that comes on our highway system in Nova Scotia is primarily by the increased volume of trucking today because of the absence of the rail system. Certainly, it would be to the advantage of the Nova Scotia motoring public to have the trucks hauling garbage off the road, But secondly, I would think that it probably make economic sense as well. There are two routes out of Sydney to Hawkesbury, and both of them are on highways that although they are 100 series highways, they are not twinned highways, Mr. Speaker. So therefore, I would certainly encourage Cape Breton Regional Municipality to consider rail.
The honourable member for Cape Breton West on your final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Presently, I believe the cost of processing garbage in CBRM is less than $100 a ton. Now, this contract calls for $85 a ton tipping fee and approximately $123 a ton for transportation. Mr. Speaker, it is generally acknowledged, as the Minister has alluded to, that one rail boxcar of garbage is equivalent to 10 18-wheeler trucks on the highway. Unless trucking CBRM's garbage on Highway 105 is assured, transporting 3,000 tons of garbage on Route Number 4 in its present state is a recipe for disaster and should not be allowed. So my question to the Minister, will the Minister request staff in his department to meet with CBRM officials to assess the impact of their decision to transport garbage to Guysborough?
Now, Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
Mr. Speaker, I have staff meeting with CBRM on a fairly regular basis on a number of different matters that we're involved with regard to transportation needs in Cape Breton, and certainly I'll bring this to the attention of my Deputy Minister.
The honourable member for Digby Annapolis.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Fisheries and Agriculture. Last year, during the close of the lobster season in LFA 34 in West and Southwest Nova Scotia, violence erupted because of illegal fishing. And this year's closed season is less than 2 weeks away on May 31st. Mr. Speaker, my question is, will the Minister tell us what plans the province has in place to ensure this does not happen again during this up-and-coming closed season?
Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and it's great that the member opposite asked this question to let the House know what's been happening over the last few months. Of course, my department is now sitting on a task force with the RCMP, with the federal DFO, looking at this issue to ensure that the RCMP and, of course, and DFO will have their officers here, that we will have every bit of our enforcement in place to make sure that the illegal buying of lobsters will not be happening. So, Mr. Speaker, I think I'm very comfortable that this closed season will not turn out like last season because of these things being done and being ready as this comes along.
The honourable member for Digby Annapolis on your first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, last year the province seemed to do little to ensure the safety of those fish stocks and even the safety of the people that were involved in them. Violence erupted in that area, and we don't want to see this happen again. This is being talked about just as we speak right now on the wharves and the local harbors. My question again to the Minister, what is your government doing to ensure the illegal buying of any illegal caught lobster does not infringe on the conservation of this fishery?
The honourable Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as I said in my first response, we are part of the new task force that's been put together, being led by the RCMP to ensure that violence will not be taking place in that area. I can also tell the member opposite that our staff has been increased in the southwest quadrant to provide inspection to plants in that area to ensure that the buying of lobsters, legal lobsters, will not be happening in southwest this season.
The honourable member for Digby Annapolis on your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, the lobster fishery is one of the most important fisheries to this province. Fishermen are not going to stand by this year and watch illegal sales of lobsters. They need to be guaranteed that this is not going to happen again this year. So my question to the Minister is the government, if this government does not give them a guarantee, how will this government deal with the fishermen taking the law into their own hands?
Now the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member opposite again for his question.
Simply put, is that we've been working closely with all people involved in this case to ensure the safety of all Nova Scotians when it comes to the illegal lobster fishery. Just 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to have a phone call, of course, with the Minister of Fisheries, Jeff Regan, who assured me at that time that they would be putting all their resources towards this issue. I, of course, wrote a letter to the Minister ensuring that his department is ready for it. I do have assurances from DFO that they will be making sure that they will have extra officers in the area, and I will ensure that my people are on the ground to ensure that we have a safe summer and not have to worry about what we did last year.
Now, member for Hants East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries. Farmers in Nova Scotia want to be able to plan for their future, but at the current time there's no guidance or long-term planning being undertaken by this government with the objective of providing long-term stability for the industry. Many commodities are receiving prices well below their cost of production. The industry has been requesting assistance to put a system in place which will provide a fair share of the retail price of agricultural products back to the farmer. So, Mr. Speaker, my question for the Minister, where is this government at in its plans to address this current crisis in agriculture?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member opposite for his question. It's good, another good opportunity to get up and talk about what's been happening. Of course, as we've talked about in this House on a number of occasions, that farmers are not getting a fair price for the foods and the things that they grow. We're not seeing that translate into the price that we're seeing in the grocery stores. And what we're doing is working with the Grocers Association, working with Atlantic Wholesalers and Sobeys and Co-op and all those other folks to sit down and find out exactly how we can make sure that farmers get their fair share.
Now, member for Hants East on your first supplementary.
Well, I know what the Minister has found out, that there's absolutely nothing he can do unless he's willing to address the interprovincial trade agreement. I can shortchange him on that one. Mr. Speaker, my question now is for the Premier. The Premier announced at the Conservative Convention in February 2004 that he was going to put Nova Scotia agricultural products into our provincial institutions. And to date, this has been nothing but all talk and no action. So, Mr. Speaker, to this point it seems that the only person who may have benefited from the Premier's comments was the Premier, and Nova Scotia farmers want to know when they will see some benefit from such a policy and gain access to these institutions.
The Honourable Premier.
I refer that to the Minister.
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I can tell the member opposite, and we're talking about brand Nova Scotia again. We're talking about getting agricultural products into Nova Scotia institutions. Mr. Speaker, almost all, and I can't say all, I wouldn't admit to that right now, but it's going to happen that all products, all agricultural products, all food products that are going into our institutions will be from Atlantic Canada.
Now, member for Hants East on your final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to tell the Minister that brand Nova Scotia or getting agricultural products into institutions or into stores means absolutely nothing to farmers if they can't get their price. And that's what the Minister has to address. In June 2004, an audit of the livestock, poultry, and fur facilities took place, and many recommendations were made concerning the future of some of the livestock at the Nova Scotia Agricultural College. In particular, the cutting of the pine marten colony and the world-class foxes, which represent genetically one of the highest quality breeding colonies in the world, as well as the reduction of the sheep flock, which has a very practical application here in Nova Scotia. So my question to the Minister of Agriculture, why does the Minister not see any value in these programs when the industry sees the research as invaluable?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And the member opposite basically brings into question what's happening at the NSAC. What's happening at the NSAC, there was a study done on how they rear and take care of the animals on that site. There was a question in how many animals were there and the things that they would probably have to do in order to ensure that they're there. Mr. Speaker, the fox herd, the fox
bunch there is still at the farm at the NSAC. There is dialogue happening between the NSAC and the Fox Breeders Association of Nova Scotia to ensure that they will be staying there. Mr. Speaker, also, the pine martens, I think, are better served with the Department of Natural Resources at the Shubenacadie Park. So, Mr. Speaker, we are addressing those issues.
The honourable member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations. My question is in regard to the new land registration system. Under this system, whenever land is transferred for value, subdivided or remortgaged, the owner is required to convert the land into the registry. Constituents have been complaining to us that the cost to do this land conversion is approximately $1,000. Can the Minister advise who this approximate $1,000 cost is paid to?
The Honourable Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Mr. Speaker, it would be to the lawyer who handles the transaction on behalf of the purchaser or seller.
The Honourable member for Halifax Clayton Park on your first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, in many situations, this $1,000 is onerous, especially when the owner cannot afford to pay for the fee. Does the Minister have any program in place that would assist low-income property owners to pay this approximate $1,000 cost?
The Honourable Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Mr. Speaker, purchasers or sellers of homes are aware that it costs money to register property and to do legal work here in the province of Nova Scotia. I would say to the member opposite that the experience that we've had with Registry 2000 is that the price charged by most lawyers across this province is significantly less than what the member opposite has said, and that the market actually dictates the amount of money that the purchaser or seller would pay with respect to legal fees to register their property through the Registry 2000 system.
Now, member of Halifax Clayton Park on your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, the cost we're speaking about today is a one-time cost, and it's a new cost as a result of this new registry system being in place. I'm asking the Minister today if he would agree to consider a way to help low-income Nova Scotians absorb that cost if they happen to be caught in this one-time transfer of property.
The Honourable Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's again, it is a market-driven fee that is charged by lawyers based on the amount of work that they do to transfer the property into the system. I will tell the member opposite and all Nova Scotians that there was a fee before we had Registry 2000. There's a fee now that we started Registry 2000, and there will be a fee the next time people register a mortgage as well, Mr. Speaker.
Now, member Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Transportation and Public Works. Mr. Speaker, it is 20 years since the Sydney tar ponds were identified as one of Canada's most toxic sites. And now it appears the federal government is opting for further studies, meaning...
Order, please. Order, please. I'm a member for Cape Breton West. I'm a member Cape Breton West has the floor.
Meaning further delays. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Transportation and Public Works has indicated the provincial government is considering proceeding with the cleanup without any further delay. So my question to the Minister, what action is the Minister contemplating?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
Mr. Speaker, the federal government has decreed that we will have a full panel review of the Sydney tar ponds and the coke oven site cleanup, and it has been the opinion of the provincial government from the get-go that a comprehensive review would be the only type of review that would be necessary. The reason being simply that it's much shorter and much more focused than the full panel review. We have gone back to the federal government with several points of interest to us. One is the cost, another one is the time, etc. And we expect to get further notification from them as to how we will proceed.
Honourable Member Cape Breton West on your first supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in Cape Breton there are several abandoned, cold or closed coal mines that would make excellent sites for the deposit of tar pond sludge if properly encapsulated. This would ensure the cleanup of the tar ponds in a timely manner, protect the environment, and create much-needed employment. Mr. Speaker, will the minister consult with the DevCo representatives that oversee the coal mines in an effort to consider this option?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation, Public Works.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Capping the top on the sludge, I guess, is one way we could perhaps accomplish the problem that we have in Sydney, and I'll certainly bring that to the attention of the people in Cape Breton who are looking after that project.
The Honourable Member Cape Breton West on your final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Perhaps the minister would be kind enough, once he consults with the DevCo officials, also perhaps involve the federal representatives in the federal government overseeing the Cape Breton Development Corporation, because I think that it would be good to provide a detailed report so that it would eliminate a lot of the polarization that now exists in industrial Cape Breton on the issue of the cleanup of the tar ponds that we all know is certainly there before the public.
No, Minister of Transportation, Public Works.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to be very clear. We are determined to clean up the tar ponds. We're determined to do it in a fashion, Mr. Speaker, that is accommodated within the present environmental rules, and we intend to do it as rapidly as possible. And having said that, Mr. Speaker, I just hope that the federal government realizes that perhaps the provincial thoughts on this subject are appropriate.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My question has to do with safety at Cole Harbour High in my riding, Mr. Speaker. It has become a concern because the school is so overcrowded and student numbers are on the rise. The School Advisory Council Chair, Jerry Janes, has written a letter highlighting concerns, and I'd like to table that letter. The chief concerns are that the cafeteria is too small, the driveway becomes blocked at the end of the school day, so emergency vehicles couldn't get in if they had to, the gym is too small, and there's not enough classrooms. So my question to the Minister of Education is simple, and that's, do you have any plans to deal with these problems?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, the Department, too, has received the letter from Mr. Janes and will respond in due course. As the Honourable Member would know, that school is run by the Halifax Regional School Board, and a number of the concerns articulated are ones that would be addressed or passed through from the board to us.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on your first supplementary.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a copy of the Halifax Regional School Board's most recent capital construction priority list, and unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, Cole Harbour High is not on that list. Space is severely limited at the school, and it only going to get worse. The cafeteria is so small that students are eating their lunch in shifts. Students have to eat in the hallways, in the main foyer, and in the office. In fact, in the stairwells as well, as I understand it, Mr. Speaker. This kind of congestion is a safety concern, and the students need a new cafeteria. So my question to the Minister is, what is it going to take for you to investigate this situation?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Speaker. The Honourable Member would be aware that in 2000 that there was a report done on Cole Harbour District High, and at that time they found they had a structure that was in good shape and should indeed last for another 30 to 40 years. However, as a result of that thing, the recommendation, the prime recommendation that came out of that report is that the school boundaries be changed so that some of the pupils that currently go to Cole Harbour could flow to Auburn or to Prince Andrew, but no action was taken on that.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on your final supplementary.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Teachers travel from class to class with trolleys to carry their teaching materials because there's not enough classrooms. The gym isn't regulation size. There's no seating for spectators. This, of course, puts a limit on the sports events. The Minister's response, however, has just underlined one of the potential ways to resolve that problem. So I want to ask the Minister, what action he will now take, understanding the possible solution, in order to ensure that students at Cole Harbour High have the same advantages that students at other high schools throughout the province have.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
There are two things, Mr. Speaker, that the two comments that I'd make. First of all, there is a school capital construction report that will be coming into the department. I have not seen that, so whether there would be anything that has been submitted by the Halifax School Board that would remediate that, I don't know. But secondly, if the school board would like us to sit down and to try and address that boundary issue with them, we'd be pleased to do so.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Minister responsible for the Public Service Commission. The province has an aging population, I know. It's her turn. 72% of the Public Service Commission employees are more than 40 years old, and many are soon up for retirement. Mr. Speaker, during the estimates, the Minister told us that a human resource plan, a corporate human resource plan, was being developed at a cost of something like $1.2 million. In fact, the Commission's budget itself is up a whopping 53% this year. Many new staff are also being added. So my question to the Minister is, can the Minister confirm that the Department is indeed spending $1.2 million on a human resources plan, and let the House know how many employees are being hired to do this?
The Honourable Minister of Human Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And yes, it is correct that the budget for the corporate HR plan is $1.2 million. Mr. Speaker, the cost of not doing this would be insurmountable.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Clayton Park on your first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, it seems like a very high number considering that we already know what the problem is. Does the Minister think it's reasonable to spend so much rather than putting the tender out for public tender?